Welcome to this morning's Family Caregiver webinar. My name is Carrie McClellan. I'm the Outreach Manager for ElderHelp, and I will be helping to facilitate today's webinar. I will introduce our speaker, Jean Alton, in just a couple of moments. So hopefully everything is working properly on your end. Just kind of a couple of housekeeping items. If throughout the presentation, if you have any questions, feel free to type them into the question pane. It should say question, it might say chat, but use that to type in your questions, and we will go through those at the end of the presentation and be happy to answer those questions. So we will also be recording this webinar, and we'll send you the recorded version with a follow-up email, as well as a couple of attachments and resources. So keep an eye out for that after the webinar. All right. So our mission at ElderHelp, I always like to share just a little bit about who we are and why we do these webinars. So our mission is to support older adults and help them continue living independently with dignity for as long as possible in their homes. We've been supporting the San Diego community for over 49 years now, and during that time, we've not only supported seniors directly, but also families, those who are caring for an aging loved one, looking for resources, and kind of trying to fill in all of those puzzle pieces to make sure that their loved ones are able to continue living independently and safely for as long as possible. So at ElderHelp, we have a set of core services. We offer information and referrals. So if anybody is looking for resources, we're happy to help connect you with those in our community and beyond. We offer check-in phone calls so that people can have a live person checking in, making sure they're doing all right. We have a process in place if we're not able to reach that individual so that we can ultimately confirm that they are doing okay. We offer transportation through our Seniors A Go-Go program and other volunteer services through our care coordination program, including grocery shopping, pantry deliveries, home office help, home safety services, and our social workers assess and advocate for our clients. We offer a variety of housing services, including a home share program, which is essentially a roommate matching. And through our nutrition services, we have a variety of ways that individuals can access food. And I will spend a moment on our family caregiver program. So I mentioned, provide services and supports for older adults to continue aging in place successfully. And a lot of times there are family members involved. So we are happy to connect with resources for individuals who might be looking for different ways to support their aging loved ones. We offer our information and referral service, as I mentioned, to anybody who is interested in that type of support. These webinars are also very helpful. We offer them on an almost monthly basis. We are fortunate to partner with Alzheimer's San Diego for some of these webinars, and today's topic will be through our expert speaker. So I will introduce her in just a moment, but we do record all of the webinars, and they are kept in a webinar library on our family caregiver page of our website. So I will share that link with everybody in the follow-up email as well, so that you can check out other topics that we might have covered previously. We have created online courses for family members who are at any stage of the caregiving journey. So if you're just getting started, or if you are in the middle, we have a lot of great assessment tools and educational information through those online courses that are also accessed on our family caregiver page. So I encourage anybody to check those out if you haven't yet done so. And today's topic of safety at home is an important one, and there's so many different aspects that are involved with thinking about maintaining the safety of our loved ones in their home. And then when you add somebody who might be experiencing a decline in their memory or forgetfulness, that adds a new level of concern. So I look forward to sharing the wisdom and expertise of Jean Alton with Alzheimer's San Diego with all of you in just a moment. but I am going to formally introduce her and then she can take it away. So Jean has worked in the field of Alzheimer's disease and related dementias for over 30 years. She has a bachelor's degree in psychology and in recreation therapy, and is a certified positive approach to care dementia trainer. Jean's expertise is built upon her many years of experience working in a variety of settings, including memory care in facilities, adult social day programs, early memory loss programs, and care management. Jean is a senior dementia educator with Alzheimer's San Diego, where she provides community education and coordinates programs for people with early stage dementia. So it's always a pleasure to have you, Jean, here with us and sharing your expertise. And I know that our attendees will learn a lot from you today. So welcome.
Thank you, Carrie. I'm always so happy to present here together with ElderHelp, which is a great organization, folks. And what I want to say is, as we get along here today talking about safety, I want you to know that I will be talking about safety in kind of general overriding terms with regards to general safety with a person with a diagnosis of dementia in the home. And we'll touch briefly on some of the specific areas of safety, but what I want to let you know is that Alzheimer's San Diego, we do have some of our classes either by webinar or in person or in our webinar library that are focused on particular areas of safety. And of course, ElderHelp has lots of good information, resources, and people that you can contact that can provide you with supports as well and information with regards to safety. So we're going to just do a general overview today, and then for those of you that want to dive deeper into some specifics in some very specific areas, just know that both of our organizations can help you with that. Okay, let's have a look at our next slide, Carrie.
Sure.
And I just very quickly want to acknowledge that the curriculum I'm presenting to all of you today is supported by a grant through the Bureau of Justice Assistance, which is a component, a part of the Department of Justice, the U.S. Department of Justice. So we just acknowledge that and appreciate that support. So our agenda for today, that's the next slide. Should I be advancing these myself, Carrie?
If you would like to, or I'm happy to do that for you, whatever works best.
Just keep you doing that, if that's all right.
Yeah, you just let me know.
Okay, thank you. So here's our agenda, and what we'll start with is how the physical and cognitive symptoms of dementia are impacting safety awareness. And so we'll talk about that, and then we'll talk about ways to reduce some of the risks of falls and some of the other specific areas, injuries, medication, abuse, and wandering, and we'll round it out with some community safety resources. So just to get started, we'll go to the next slide, and just to make sure we're all on the same page here with regards to our understanding of dementia, we want to just remind everyone that dementia is what we call a group of symptoms that's caused by something that's going on in a person, something medically, that is affecting cognition. It may be causing behavior changes and interfering with normal daily activities. And so there's all sorts of different medical conditions that can cause dementia. And in the next slide, we'll see Alzheimer's disease is the most common type of dementia. It accounts for about 60 to 80% of dementias. And Alzheimer's disease is a progressive neurodegenerative disease. So it is causing brain cell death. And how the disease progresses and how the symptoms appear in people is, runs the gamut from A to Z in terms of presentation. So one of the things we always say at Alzheimer's San Diego is If you've met one person with Alzheimer's disease, you've met one person. So, we talk about some of the generalities that many people share, the symptoms that they may share. So, for example, early memory loss is a pretty typical symptom of a person with Alzheimer's disease. And many people with Alzheimer's disease will have that early memory loss. But sometimes you have people who don't appear to have that significant early memory loss. Now, it may be they have a different type of dementia. It may be that they do have Alzheimer's disease, but again, the presentation is somewhat different than what we see in other people. So just keep that in mind, that the progression and the symptoms do vary widely. And as I said, Alzheimer's disease is the most common type of dementia. So let's dive down into what the symptoms are and how this is impacting safety. So we'll start with the first, which is memory loss. And again, referring to that short-term memory recall that is poor in many, many people with Alzheimer's disease. So this is where we see people with that rapid forgetting. So that you've told them maybe we're going to the doctor's office today, and the person with dementia continues asking you that question, where are we going today? Where are we going today? And you've told them maybe 10 times, maybe 15 times, maybe 20 or 30 times already. But it's that short-term memory, that recall, that their brain is not able to accomplish anymore in order to keep that information, retain it. And so this is why we have people experiencing this rapid forgetting. And then we also have difficulty in navigating in familiar places. So that might be everything from around the home to around the yard, to the neighborhood, to the broader community that people live in. Might not be remembering where the local drugstore or grocery store is, getting lost, driving down to go to Vaughn's to pick up a few things, not coming home for 2 or 3 hours because they've been out driving around looking for that grocery store and haven't been able to find it. Or a person walking in the neighborhood, just going for a nice walk in a neighborhood they've lived in for many, many years, and then becoming lost and not able to navigate their way to get back home. So these are some of the things that we see happening that are impacting safety, for sure with regards to wandering, but also with that rapid forgetting. How might that affect safety? Well, one thing that we'll talk about a little bit later is medications. So if you've got poor short-term recall, you may not remember if you've taken your medication today. And so you may not take your medication at all, or you might end up taking it 2 or 3 times over because you've forgotten that you took it already. You may forget that you put something on the stovetop, a pot of soup to make for lunch, and you forgot about it and it burns down. Or that you got the bathtub water running because you're going to take a bath, and because of your poor short-term memory, you forgot that you did that, you walk away, and now you've got an overflowing bathtub. Now, is an overflowing bathtub a safety issue? Well, it certainly could be if then you come into the area that's got water all over the floor and a person slips and falls. But I want you to just think in these broad terms about how short-term changes in short-term recall can impact safety. So that's memory loss. Now let's talk about judgment. In the area of judgment, what we see is changes in poor decision-making and increased impulsivity. So judgment is impaired. And so using executive function to be able to think things through, use reasoning and logic, those are the parts of the cognition that are being impacted and affecting safety. And so this is leading to impulsivity and poor decision making. So, for example, I've used this example a few times, but I use it because it's true. It's a real life one of a client that I worked with who was experiencing dementia. It turned out to be Alzheimer's disease. And this lady was in the, kind of earlier stages of the disease. And they had a person come to the door who told them that they needed a new roof. Their roof was in really bad shape and they were going to be cited by the insurance company unless they got this roof fixed. And this person offered, their business to fix the roof for the nice round sum of $30,000. And this lady signed up for it. She wrote this person a check for the $30,000 and, to no surprise after the fact, and for those of us that have still good reasoning, logic, and judgment, this person who came knocking at the door, who was telling them they needed a new roof and could provide it for them, disappeared once the check was cashed. And so these are the kind of things that may happen and how it is impacting people in terms of safety. So in this case, we're saying that people can be vulnerable to being taken advantage of, to being abused in different ways. But it can also be kind of more simple things, such as, we use judgment to guide how we move through our environment, how we move through our neighborhood. So for example, if I'm going to cross the street, really anywhere here in my neighborhood, and certainly in some of the busier streets, I need to either go to a crosswalk and wait for the walk light to come on, or if I'm going to cross without a crosswalk, I need to really look both ways and use judgment in terms of if I see a car down the road that is coming this way, to be able to judge how far it is distance-wise, and do I have time enough to get across the street safely? So that's another example of how judgment and poor judgment because of a diagnosis of dementia can affect safety. So how about orientation is next? So what we know happens with many people with dementia at some point in the disease is that they have difficulty tracking the passage of time. And this combined with confusion and disorientation can result in some vulnerability to unforeseen circumstances in a lot of ways, and that can result in harming the safety of the individual. So when I say difficulty tracking the passage of time, what I mean is 10 minutes, 5 minutes even, may seem like a long, long time for a person with dementia. And likewise, they may, for example, let's just say I'm going to use this example because this is a real life one, and this is actually from a colleague of mine whose mom had dementia. And she and her mom ran over to the store, and my colleague had to run in the store for just a quick trip in to get a couple of things. And when she got out, her mom had gotten herself out of the car and was starting to move around the parking lot. And she said, Mom, what are you doing? And what her mom said to her is, "You've been gone for hours. I didn't know where you were. I was really worried." And so what she perceived as hours was, maybe 10 minutes. So that's an example of difficulty tracking the passage of time. And often what happens then is an example of just what I've given to you, is that because maybe they've forgotten, even within your home, that you've said, "I'm going to go take a shower right now. I'll be back with you in just 5 or 10 minutes. Maybe they lose track of that passage of time, or it becomes distorted. But also with the short-term memory loss, they forget that you told them you were in the shower. And so now they're starting to look for you, maybe around the house, but maybe outside of the house, leading to a wandering incident. So there's orientation. Behavior. Now, behavior changes are not a feature of just the normal aging process, but it is a pretty common feature and symptom of a dementia. And what we do see is changes in mood and personality, and sometimes some unstable emotions. So quick to become anxious or agitated, or quick to become angry, combative, or quick to become very upset and crying. And just within the context of that, having unstable emotions can lead to poor decision making. And I think we can all relate to that, okay? If your mind, your head is in a place where you're really angry with someone or about something. So, yeah, I mean, sometimes we have poor decision making. Maybe we say or do something that we probably shouldn't have, or maybe regret afterwards. If we're fearful, we may react with a flight reaction, so that we try to get away from whatever the situation is that is frightening us. And maybe in hindsight, we say, well, why, I should have stood up for myself in that instance. So just for all of us to remind ourselves that this happens to all of us, when we're in the throes of an emotional reaction, that our decision making is being impaired. And so how does this impact people with dementia? Well, sometimes, and I'm going to give you another example, which kind of, in a way, was kind of cute in the whole big picture of things. So this one couple I was working with, the lady had dementia, and her husband was helping her in the morning, just to get dressed and kind of get ready for the day. And however he was doing it or approaching her that morning really annoyed and irritated her, and she got upset. And she told him to get out of here and get away from me. And she was starting to become combative. And he had the presence of mind to just back away from the situation, just say, okay, I'm leaving. And so he left the bedroom area and went to the kitchen and, started attending, getting coffee going and such. And so his wife came then, a few minutes later, came into the kitchen and dressed and such. And she looked at him and she said, oh, thank goodness you're here. She said, there's an awful man that was down in the bedroom trying to tell me what to do. So again, an example of how dementia is affecting a situation that, he had the husband had the wherewithal to just avoid the situation. But if he hadn't have done, what could have happened? Well, she could have got physically combative with him, or maybe she could have ran out the house because she wanted to get away from this terrible man. Or maybe she would feel the need to defend herself with something. So it was an incident that got nipped in the bud, but it could have led to a safety situation. So that's some examples of how behavior may affect safety. Now, with physical abilities, and I think I might have a wee bit of a glitch in my slides there. Yes, I do. But let's just talk about physical abilities for a minute. We do see changes in people with dementia, changes in balance, strength, and mobility. And clearly that's a safety issue because it may lead to falls. It may lead to poor judgment in terms of what we're able to do. and additionally loss of fine motor skill. Okay, so I think we can all realize and figure out how changes in balance might lead to a fall, but how about strength, mobility, and fine motor skill? Well, here's an example. This is a big coffee cup I have, and it holds a good amount of coffee. And what if the coffee is just fresh and it's really, really hot? And this mug is actually pretty heavy, and then when it's got hot coffee in, it's heavier. So if my strength and my mobility are not so good and my fine motor skill isn't so good, there is a good possibility that this coffee might end up spilling on me, hot coffee. And in that case, then, we may have a situation where there's a scald or a burn. And so that's an example of how those kind of changes in physical abilities can affect safety. Changes in the senses, which we have up already. We need to recognize that there are changes to the visual field and depth perception of people living with dementia. And so when I go like this, it's because the visual field gets narrower for them, so that there's a lot of visual information that's not being properly processed by the brain. All this peripheral information that is important, particularly as regards safety. And the depth perception, again, may result in some falls. That's the one that most easily comes to mind, because it may be affecting, again, how we're walking and how we're stepping on things, up on curbs, down, uneven, sidewalks or pavement or whatever it is that we're walking on that's uneven. And the other thing is there's decreased recognition of sensory information. And so what we mean by that is similar to what I've just said with the visual field changing, is the nose, the ears, the taste, sometimes the touch too. It's not that these senses don't work, it's that the information is not being processed correctly by the brain because of the damage being done in the brain because of the dementia. So maybe I've left that pot of something or other on the stove top and it's burning, and previous to dementia, I would recognize the smell of something burning, and then, oh gosh, I left that on, and I'd go out there and take care of it. Now that might not happen. If I am still driving, a person with dementia still driving, because many people in the early stages of dementia are still driving, and it's okay. And at some point in disease progression, it becomes an issue. Everything from not having that peripheral vision to be able to see, shoulder check and see what's coming up behind us, but also to hear and recognize sirens, to know we need to pull over, to look and identify where is the siren coming from. Is it behind me, coming from the side? Is it coming this way? And then responding appropriately. And as far as kind of perception and touch is, again, we'll reference hot items. Hot water, for example, is a person with dementia has diminished ability to be able to tell the temperature of water or another substance, even when there's visual cues and others to give us a sense of what's going on. So we get the shower going and it's all steamed up in the bathroom. And you know how you can get close to it without putting your hand in the water, but you can feel the heat? That's the kind of information that people with dementia are not processing correctly. So they may jump into the shower when it's too hot of water. So that's some examples of how both physical abilities and senses in a person with dementia are impacting safety. All right, so we've had kind of a general overlook of all these things. Let's go on to talk about how and what do we do to try and mitigate all these potential places and times for a person's safety to be compromised. And so the next picture will show, next slide will show us that we can do everything we can with regards to prevention, and then we can do everything that we can with regards to adaptation. So prevention, yes, is controlling what you can control in the home environment, and then adjusting is modifying and adjusting with regards to the things we can't completely control. And so in this picture, what we're seeing in the top, that's a swimming pool in the backyard that has a safety fence around it. And so that's, you know, clearly a way of preventing somebody from going into the pool area. Now, for a person with dementia, it might need to be a little bit more elaborate than what we see here. This might keep a child out, but perhaps it might not be high enough to keep an adult with dementia out. So there might need to be adjustments made there. What we have in the middle is it's kind of an old-fashioned unit now, I guess we would say. It's a Garmin unit, which you know, is like a locator. Tells you, you know, communicates your whereabouts to others. So you can use that to assist with navigation, knowing where a person is or knowing where you yourself are. So that's a way of adaptation, okay? It's, you know, we maybe can't control 100% whether a person wanders or not. And in fact, that is the truth. But an adaptation is to, in this instance, several years ago, people used Garmin's. Now, most of us have smartphones that have GPS locators. And in addition to that, there's other programs and services that can support the adaptation of the environment. The bottom picture is of some kind of, it's a closed container that is secured through kind of the straps and the locking system that you see hanging off the side. So there's some kind of hazardous material in there. Unless you are the person with the codes to be able to get into this particular locking unit, you're not going to be able to get into this, whatever it is inside of this container. And so again, that's showing prevention here, not being able to get into that. So these are the ways we need to approach the home and the environment and all the minutia of it when there is a person with dementia living in the home and in the neighborhood and area. So let's start with the obvious. Let's go to the next slide, please, Carrie. And the most, is it the most important? I was going to say the most important. It's not the most important. It's one of many most importance. So is it safe to be home alone? And this is something that needs to be constantly assessed, because people in the early stages of Alzheimer's disease can be and often are safe to be home alone. But due to the progressive nature of the disease, at some point it becomes unsafe to be home alone. But it is, as I like to say, shades of gray. It doesn't happen overnight, clearly. You know, today this person is good and tomorrow they're not. It's shades of gray. So the questions we need to ask as the care partners and the family members and friends and people who care about these people living with a diagnosis of dementia are these questions. Would they know when and how to get help? Have they ever wandered or become disoriented? And do they require supervision for safety when they're not alone? Now let's look at that a little bit more closely. So would they know when and how to get help? And, you know, I've worked with families who have asked themselves that question, and they've maybe asked the person living with dementia that question, and the answer has been yes. An answer, the person with dementia has said, yes, I would, I would call 911 and get help. And that's a great answer. And here's the thing is that's an answer we all know quite well. It's kind of an overlearned answer. And so being able to say it, that that's what I would do, is different from being able to carry it out, to follow through on that. Okay, you'll call 911. Well, show me how you would do that. Where is the phone? And how would you dial 911? And what is the address here? What would you tell them? And tell them, repeat back the address. And then after you called 911, what would you do? And again, depending on the situation, if it's because there's a fire, the answer would need to be to leave the home, whatever it might be. So what I'm saying to you here is do more than just ask yourself the question, and do more than just asking the person with dementia the question. Test it out and see if the follow through is there. Have they ever wandered or become disoriented? We're going to come back to that in a little bit. So let's just put that to the side for the moment. Do they require supervision for safety when they're not alone? And so think about everything from, handling knives and perhaps other equipment in the kitchen, but also think about kind of the smaller, more regular stuff. And by that, I mean, if you have a bathroom, like many bathrooms, that has a few different things out on the countertop, is the person able to identify what is the toothpaste versus what is the Benadryl cream for the skin irritations? Does the person know the difference between the tube, or excuse me, the can of Lysol versus the can of hairspray? Because these things can look alike. And I mean, these situations have happened where people have used something that could have harmed or perhaps did harm themselves or somebody else because they thought they were using, hairspray or toothpaste to carry out this particular task. So it's important to think about that and see how they're functioning when they are left alone with, some choices to make, and there's some different items, in available to them and within their visual range that they would be using, and how would they choose the correct things to use. All right, so the next slide is telling us that, yes, people living with dementia will eventually require 24/7 supervision. So it is important to be assessing whether a person is safe to be home alone on a regular basis. And it doesn't mean you instantly go to 24/7 supervision, but rather that you start to build in additional supports and resources for the person with dementia for when you will be away, and or if you get sick, and or if you get hurt and have to be hospitalized. So you kind of have to think about the situations that could come about where, it's kind of like envisioning the bad in order to be prepared for it. Because what we want to see all families doing, families living with somebody with a diagnosis of dementia, is to not have to act or react in a time of crisis or panic, but rather to have some systems and plans in place so that you can kind of quickly trigger those plans and get extra support and services in. in any kind of urgent situation. Okay, let's look at some of the safety considerations. And this is where we're going to just touch lightly on all of these things, but know that really we at Alzheimer's San Diego, we have classes on all of these things. You can look in our webinar library, have a look also in ElderHelp's webinar library, and then be watching for both live webinars through us and in-person classes as well. And additionally, you can call either of our organizations and we'll give you lots of additional information, either by email or we can send it out by mail or just talk to you over the phone about these things. So we're going to touch on each of these just briefly. So let's continue on here, Carrie, and let's talk about fall prevention. So one of the best ways to do what you can to prevent a fall is to have really good lighting in the home and lots of lighting. And one of the things that is highly recommended is that we have track lighting down low, kind of like, for example, in the kitchen underneath the cabinets where the lighting is showing the floor, so that we're trying to eliminate shadows so that the floor is really clearly seen. And that can happen also in the bathroom. And we can also have some of that track lighting in other areas of the home. So in addition to good lighting, you know, whether it be ceiling lights or lamps or whatever it is, we need to have lots of light for people with dementia. Again, because of the changes in the visual field and the depth perception. Remove some of the obstacles and clutter. We all have obstacles and clutter in our homes to one degree or another. And so it might be some stacked books beside a chair or magazines. I'll tell you, in our house, you know what it is? It's dog toys. So there's dog toys scattered throughout the home. And I see them most of the time, but every once in a while I step on one and it squeaks. And yeah, lo and behold, it's a dog toy. Now, if I was someone with dementia, that dog toy might be enough to make me fall because I lose my balance or my foot kind of slips on it or whatever it is that happens. So take care of those things. Power cords are another thing. Make sure you don't have cords laying across the floor, that they're really out of the way, not where anyone would be moving their feet particularly. Think about handrails and grab bars, most certainly for the bathroom. And that's something I encourage everyone to do much sooner rather than later. At some point, any of us live long enough, we're going to need those items ourselves, dementia or no dementia. Handrails and grab bars. And handrails can also be used, along stairs. Often they are used, but we tend to see just one handrail on kind of the more open side of the stairs. But you can also get a handrail installed on the closed side of the stairs, so people are able to hang on to both sides, okay? Think about floor coverings and go for non-skid mats. And the more you can actually eliminate some of those area rugs, probably the better. But in addition to that, make sure people have good footwear on in the home. And so I always just say, be careful with the slippers that you get, because very few of them are really adequate for safety purposes. The ones where you just slip your foot in, those ones are not good for safety. They're dangerous. There's just lots of shoes that are not, and slippers that are not good for safety. Another thing then with regards to fall prevention is for people to work on their balance and strengthen their legs and arms and in their core. And there are lots of good programs that can provide exercise routines for that through, for example, Live Well San Diego. We also have a San Diego Fall Prevention Task Force that can assist with that. And then again, we have a class on fall prevention where we have a physical therapist come in and provide some, visual examples of exercises to do to strengthen balance and flexibility. So, all right, let's go on to other household injuries. So this is where we just kind of take a look around the home and see what do we need to prevent or adapt. So by preventing, we limit access to or remove from the environment, or we adapt. Everything that you see listed here: appliances, sharp objects, tools, and equipments. I always say, if my husband were to develop dementia, I would have to do a lockdown on the garage and do a complete and very thorough cleaning of it. And because he's got many, many tools out there, power tools, all sorts of different things. And I would have to think very carefully about, I wouldn't want to take all those things away from him, but I'd have to think very carefully about what I should remove or disable and what would be appropriate to leave for him to be able to go out and putsy around with and, feel good about his garage and his tools. We recommend you disable internal door locks. And why? Because this happened not too terribly long ago with a family we're working with. The lady with dementia went in the bathroom, to shower and whatever, use the toilet, whatever it was, do some things in the bathroom, and she locked the door. But when she was ready to leave, she didn't remember how to unlock the door. And even with family then, she was banging on it, and family came, and even with them standing outside and trying to give her direction to unlock the door, she was just upset and confused and couldn't follow that direction. And so in the end, they had to take the bathroom door off its hinges, and in order for her to get out of the bathroom. So in this instance, it's best to just disable those internal door locks so it's not an issue. Regulate water temperature on your water heater. And the recommendation is don't be setting it higher than 120 degrees. And further to that, though, the recommendation is if there's a person with dementia in the home, it's probably good to stick with it being at 100 degrees. And this way you'll still get lots of good hot water, but it's not enough to scald or burn. Think about safe chemical storage. And that runs everything from fertilizers and things that you use in the yard and in the garden, roach or pesticide sprays, or, rat bait or whatever that might be. And then looking in the home, everything from cleaning agents to thinking about even in the bathroom. What we have under our sink is rubbing alcohol and hydrogen peroxide, those two things. And so those would be two items that, would need to be secured in a secure place if we have someone with dementia living in the home. And so when we're talking about safe chemical storage, we're talking about maybe having a centralized location, for example, in the garage with a locked cabinet or cupboard for all of those items to remain in. And then lastly, think about food safety. And again, reminding ourselves that eyes are working not as efficiently as they used to. And actually, I shouldn't say it like that. The information the eyes are bringing in is not being processed the way it used to be in the brain. Same for the nose and the same for taste. So what does that mean for food safety? Maybe a person is eating food that, is starting to go bad or is not cooked properly or stored properly. The other thing is they might be eating impulsively, eating without stopping, because the signals that the stomach is giving to the brain to say, stop, I'm full, is not being processed correctly. So they're eating, without stopping. And another area that might apply to is with use of alcohol. So maybe it used to be they had a small glass of wine every night with their meal. Well, now we throw in this short-term recall, forgetting. Maybe they forget they've had a glass of wine and then they have a second, forget they had that and then they have a third. So then we have an issue there. So these are the things to think about around the house. And our next slide shows a home safety checklist that we have at Alzheimer's San Diego. And I will email this to Carrie so that if any of you want that, she can attach that in her follow-up email to all of you. And it takes you kind of step by step through some of the things we've just talked about throughout the home, in the bathroom, in the bedroom, and then being alone. So it's a really good checklist to use. Let's move on to medication safety. You know, medication errors can happen to any time to any people. And I've told this story many times, but I'm going to tell it again to you folks. One morning, my husband came to me. I was getting ready in the bathroom, and he came in. He said, "I think I took the dog's medication." And so turned out I have medications, he had medications, and our dog had medications. And we kept all these pill bottles together, and he had inadvertently taken the dog's medication. Now, it turned out okay. It didn't affect him in any adverse way. But, you know, to this point in time, none of us, including the dog, the best of my knowledge, have diagnosis of dementia. So this is all just to say medication errors can happen in a minute. So think about it and be prepared. And this is one area where it's better to put a plan into place before it's needed. Meaning, for general safety, use one pharmacy for all medications, because right away then you've got kind of a clearinghouse that is looking at all the medications you're on. And this is part of what pharmacists and pharmacist technicians do, is they're looking to see, are there contraindications between some different medications. Be sure to identify possible drug interactions and side effects, including fall risk. So all that information they put on that bottle of pills about, it says that it may make you sleepy, or don't operate a car or any other equipment when taking, read those labels and pay attention to them. And, you know, follow the guidelines that you're being given with regards to the medications. Use a pill organizer. In our case, each of us should have had our own section for our own medications, or our own organizers, which, by the way, we have now. But a couple of other things is, you know, with medication safety, at some point in time, somebody who is a care partner or a family member to the person with dementia will need to take over the responsibility for administering medication. And it's probably better for that to happen sooner rather than later, because there is so much room for error in medications. The other couple of things I'll say is talk to your pharmacist. Pharmacists are vastly underused, and they are super knowledgeable people, well trained in understanding how medications work on the human body and how they interact and sometimes contraindicate in the human body. And so even if you're buying over-the-counter things, folks, please go check with the pharmacist about whether you should be taking it or not, depending on the medications you're already taking. There are some, in particular, cold medicines that can exacerbate the symptoms of dementia, and so make people more confused, more disoriented, more unsteady on their feet. So it is highly advised that you speak with the pharmacist anytime you're going to buy something that's an over-the-counter medication that you ingest. And we've got in our webinar library a great recording of a webinar on, I think it's called it's a skills clinic webinar. So it's on medications. And we work with a geriatric pharmacist who has lots of great ideas with regards to medications. And I actually have, she has a book. I actually have it handy here. And you can get that off of Amazon. So this is a geriatric pharmacist who's here in the San Diego area. And she gives some great information with regards to medications. Okay, that's medications. Abuse prevention is next. Now, abuse prevention can take many forms. It could be physical abuse or sexual abuse. It could also be emotional or psychological. It might be undue influence, so like coercing and manipulating people into doing things because of the changes in their judgment that they might not normally do, like sign the title of the house over to the caregiver that is working with them. It might be neglect or abandonment, and it might be self-neglect. That is also considered a type of abuse. And of course, it could be financial or material exploitation. Now, any of you folks can call this number that you see at Adult Protective Services, 800-510-2020, to report what you think is suspected abuse of some kind. The other thing you can do is, if you're not sure, you feel like you're seeing some red flags, but you're not sure what this is all about, is call us or call ElderHelp. And we can listen and talk through the situation that you're concerned about to give you our objective professional opinions about it. And then we can make a report on your behalf as well too. And we are mandated reporters at Alzheimer San Diego, and they will be at ElderHelp as well too. So if you have a red flag, bottom line is, I'd say, if something is making you feel uncomfortable about a situation, or you feel like something going on, or there's a red flag, call us and talk about it with us, because it's far more important that we react to that and report it. And thank goodness if it's nothing is going on. But if we don't report it and there is something going on, that would be really awful. And the next slide is just to say that with regards to preventing financial exploitation, because there's so many different scams and so forth out there anymore, it's hard to keep track of them all. But we can use technology to our advantage by forwarding or blocking robocalls and unsolicited mail. Very important for all of us to fact check our information and know our sources. Don't assume that everybody we are working with or hearing from or even Googling is a trusted source of information or a trusted resource or a trusted support. So fact check and know your sources. And for sure, don't be replying directly to emails or calls. None of our government institutions send random emails or calls to tell us we owe taxes or they need our social security number. That's not how any of them operate. So let's have a quick look at driving. Driving, of course, is its own topic and a big topic. And we do have a class devoted to driving and dementia. Now, physical, cognitive, and sensory changes are going to affect driver safety, like I talked about. Changes in peripheral vision, changes in judgment, all of these things are impacting our ability to execute the task of driving and to do it safely. It's good to talk with the doctor, and I would say, again, call our organization or ElderHelp, because we can also tell you more about how to contact the Department of Motor Vehicles. And equally important, we can help you look at local transportation alternatives. Here's the thing. if we all live long enough, we're all going to have to give up the keys one way or another, whether we do so voluntarily or because it's forced upon us. So it's good to get a plan in place for this so that hopefully the process goes a little smoother. And in a similar vein with regards to firearm safety, and that's the next slide, please, Carrie. We have lots of people here in San Diego County who use firearms and have used firearms, maybe throughout their career or throughout their lives, ex-military or service people. And in the same vein as driving, cognitive impairment affects a person's ability to use firearms safely, regardless of their experience and skill. So again, we need to have a plan in place to potentially remove the weapons from the home or transfer ownership, or to use gun locks, or keep them in a locked safe. And we actually partner with a weapons range here locally. They provide us with free gun locks that we can give out to anybody who requests them. So you can call us and just inquire about the gun lock program, and we'll send them out to you or have you pick them up. And it's at no cost, all donated through this weapons and gun range. And if you have additional concerns or a situation going on, we can give you additional professional help and support and assistance from local law enforcement. We'll talk quickly here about wandering and doing our best to prevent wandering. Now, majority of people with dementia will wander and become lost at some point in time. And we know that because statistics support it. What I will say is I think the statistics that we have are underreported. So I think a lot of people with dementia wander that we don't ever hear about. So why do, it can happen on foot or in a vehicle or on a bus, public transportation. Why? Again, think about the distortion of time that people have, confusion and disorientation, memories of past activities. I'm going to work this morning, or I'm going to pick the kids up from school. Maybe it's physical needs or discomfort, agitation, or restlessness. And what I want to point out is all these bubble comments to the side. I never leave my wife alone for more than a few minutes at a time. He's been in this neighborhood for years and years. He knows how to get around. And I always make sure she tells me where she's going, or I always tell her where I'm going. Well, again, people don't wander until the first time they wander. And having lived in your neighborhood for 30 years doesn't preclude you from getting disoriented or confused and lost. And telling people where you are going, or they're telling you where they're going, if you've got memory loss, that doesn't help much one way or the other. So this is all to say that everyone with dementia is at risk for wandering. So in the next slide, reducing risk is a whole bunch of different steps. And this is just a brief look at some of the ones we can do. For sure, limiting access to vehicle and keys. If you keep the car keys right there in a dish by the front door and the car's parked out in the driveway, the chances that the person with dementia is going to grab them and get in the car one day are probably pretty good. So we need to limit access. Now, avoid locks. In other words, we don't lock our people living with dementia in the home, okay? And, we can't. That's against the law. We all need to have the ability to safely leave a building, and because of fire regulations, and that includes our people with dementia. So we're not using locks, but what we can use on doors to let us know if the person with dementia is moving out the door is alarms, wind chimes on the back of the door, or room monitors as well too. So there's kind of a good range, A to Z, of kind of the tools that you can use to try and reduce the risk of wandering. Yes, remove the items that suggest leaving. Again, if there's shoes and a coat and a purse sitting on, near the door, and these are cues and triggers that tell us we're leaving the home. And if they're there in front of a person with dementia, that may be enough to cue them to head out the door. We can sometimes camouflage doors and doorknobs. And then, of course, let's be proactive in thinking about unmet needs, which might be hunger, it might be thirst, it might be the need to use the bathroom, and it might be the need for movement. Maybe they're bored and antsy, restless. So let's continue on with getting home safely from wandering. Think about what you can do. Set up some kind of neighborhood network of support. Let people know that in your neighborhood that you have a person with dementia living with you. And if they see that person out and about in the neighborhood, maybe to give you a call or send you a text just to check in and see, are they okay to be out alone, or did you realize they were out, or whatever it is. Keep a list of places they may go, whether that's local grocery stores or a Target or a Starbucks or whatever it might be. Keep a recent photograph on hand. Think about personal GPS, and again, that's everything from smartphones to other more complex systems. And then there's some local programs that people can get enrolled in. And so on the next slide, we'll just talk quickly about San Diego County's Take Me Home program. This is a great program that is administered by the San Diego Sheriff's Department. It's free, no cost, and it's pretty easy to do. So it's a voluntary registry, and it gives law enforcement very quick, like almost instantaneously, access to information about a person who's registered in the program in the event of an emergency if they should wander. And it is a program designed for people who are at risk for wandering. So that includes people with dementia in addition to some other disorders and diseases. Information is confidential. It is shared with law enforcement only and can be accessed. So Sheriff's Department shares this information with any and all of the local PDs. So that if your person is registered in Take Me Home and they do wander and become lost, you don't know where they are, you call 911, you say my person is missing and is registered in the Take Me Home program. My person has Alzheimer's disease. And then these folks trigger that, the Sheriff's Department triggers that to go out to whichever PD area you are in and potentially to others as well, to then have these first responders, police officers, and so forth on the lookout for your person with dementia and actively looking for him. And the next slide, please. I'm just going to kind of run quickly through community safety resources. So on we go. Of course, ElderHelp is available with home safety inspections. These are also one of the organizations you can go to for those modifications, such as railings and safety bars and grab bars. Jewish Family Services has a Fix-It service, and the Interfaith Community Services in North County can also assist. And the next slide, Medical Alert, San Diego. This is the one where people wear a bracelet or a set of dog tags that identifies them as whatever. In this case, I think it says memory impaired to assist, and then you call the 800 number. There is the Take Me Home program, which I really strongly encourage any family with a person with dementia to get them registered into it. And if you need help with that, call us. We actually have a portal into this program so we can help you get your person registered. And then call us or call ElderHelp for these additional resources for home safety, for the classes, for all of the other questions you have. All right, I kind of buzzed through all of that pretty quick. It's a lot of information. I acknowledge that. Again, know that you can come to Carrie and to ElderHelp and to myself and to Alzheimer's San Diego, and then we can go kind of deeper into these areas that are of particular concern to you. So let's see, we've got a few minutes. Let's see if we've got any questions. Anything come up, Carrie?
Well, thank you so much, Jean. I know that's a lot of information for folks, but it is all very helpful, and you covered a lot of different components of safety. So thank you for that. And I've seen individuals as well who have used the identification tags, and it has come in handy out in the community. So I love to see that, and I encourage people to check out all of the resources you provided. Let's see if we have any questions. It looks like one came in about their mother is unplugging cords quite a bit, and especially at night in the room when the daughter is not there to supervise. Do you have any ideas or suggestions on how to prevent cords from being unplugged?
That's a good question. And off the top of my head, I have to say, no, I don't. But you know, that's something now I want to look into, so I'm going to write it down. But I'm wondering if there might be some kind of devices that, you know, would be considered child-proof,
Mm-hmm.
but in this case could be used to be dementia-proof, to prevent a person with dementia from fiddling with the cords. So that's a good question. It's one I have not been asked before, and I wish I had an answer for you straight up, but I don't. You know, gosh, would it help if you went around together? Like, I guess it depends on what kind of cords are being unplugged. I mean, it's good to have some light in there, right? So, would you maybe put it in some night lights maybe instead that don't have cord? And for the cords that are there, let's say for lamps or I don't know, a radio or something, a TV or whatever it might be, if it's a part of her routine, would it be helpful if you get the night lights installed first, because you need to have some light for safety. But if it's part of her routine that you go together and unplug the cords, if that's something that is fulfilling some kind of need for her, she's worried about them, she's worried that something's going to electronic will start on fire, I think I would try my best to try and figure out what it is. It's serving some kind of purpose for her.
I
So
think
I'm wondering if it's making her feel safer.
it sounds like it might be a bit of frustration. So she's saying that she seems to be frustrated with not being able to operate the TV or the heating pad. And she has looked into childproof locks, but hasn't come up with anything yet. So I think that you might be onto something, that there's a reason that she is doing that, and maybe seeing if I unplug and replug, will that
I mean,
sure.
in those cases, you might, I don't know, you might be at a point where you consider removing those items from the bedroom. If she's having trouble operating them, then, you know, there's that to start with. Something like a heating pad, you do have to be careful with if they don't have automatic shut-off options on, like where you don't have to press anything, they automatically shut off after a couple of hours or whatever. So I don't know, that might be some other things to consider. You know, if she's having trouble with those items, then maybe it's best if she's not using them when she's on her own or not trying to use them when she's on her own.
Yeah, and it looks like they're considering the best solution for her, that particular person, if she if it's time for her to move into an additional care setting, or
Mhm.
not. And it looks like one other person said that their grandmother is doing the same thing with the cords, for the TV and the lights, and they haven't come up with a solution either. So it seems like you're not
Oh,
alone in that. There are a couple of you that are
interesting.
experiencing that.
So I just wrote this down, and this is one of the things I love about the webinars that we do is I almost always walk away with a new nugget of information. In this case, I don't have that new nugget yet, but I'm going to look into it. So maybe I have a better answer next time. So this is
Thank you.
interesting. I appreciate the question, and certainly kind of it's a feedback in a way too, just for other
Mhm.
things that I've never thought about that before.
It's always helpful. I did have another question come in, and first, it's more of a comment that this person imagines that not all the symptoms of dementia present at the same time, but are
Correct.
there any that seem to surface first, and which one can we expect to surface later in dementia progression?
Yes, and it's true. Not all of the symptoms all show up at once, and a good thing because, that would be overwhelming to everybody, right? So one of the most common and earliest ones, again, is the rapid forgetting, the early memory loss. So the things to be thinking of, again, this is where people are maybe asking the same question over and over and over again. So, and with regards to safety, that may mean it's affecting their ability to take medication properly. Um, maybe if they're living alone, they might, if they have that rapid forgetting, they might be at risk for some other things as well too. Maybe they're not eating properly, hydrating properly. Um, is there some anxiety involved there too? So rapid forgetting is one of the earliest, and then later on, it's just I'm just going to say generally problems with executive function. And I go like this because this is when the disease process is affecting the frontal lobe. So this is when people are losing their ability to problem solve and, use reasoning and logic. And that's putting them at risk.
That makes sense. Thank you. And again, as Jean mentioned, there are a lot of other webinars that Alzheimer's San Diego has recorded and have available, as well as some other tip sheets on their resource page. So feel free to check that out, as well as ElderHelp's. Those are good questions, though. I just wanted to briefly share that we do have an upcoming webinar scheduled for May. It will be with SDG&E. So I know there's been a lot of changes through SDG&E, and they're always happy to come and try to share more information about the energy tips and solutions with us. So we'll have that scheduled. The Caregiver Coalition of San Diego, that both of our organizations are a part of, is offering a webinar on Parkinson's disease. So that will be next Friday, April 28th. So I'll include the flyer and the login details of that webinar in my follow-up email as well. And then I just wanted to remind everybody that you're welcome to contact ElderHelp if you have any general questions, or if you're looking for other information or resources. Our information is on this page here. My email is as well if you're having more specific questions, or if you want to be notified of all of our upcoming webinars and you're not yet on that list. And then our website has been listed at the bottom. So feel free to check that out, and you can see information about all of our programs. But we're always happy to do these types of webinars. And thank you so much, Jean, for your expertise and sharing all of the really helpful and tangible tips. I think that, there's so many situations that come up, and And it's always good to have some kind of idea on what to do and how to prevent. And I think you shared a lot of great ideas and solutions there. So thank you so much for your time and sharing everything with us today.
You're very welcome, Carrie. It's always a pleasure to work with you and ElderHelp. And for any of you folks that haven't, been in touch with either of our organizations, please do reach out. These are good organizations. I know I may sound a little biased there, but it's the honest to goodness truth. These are really great organizations for families to be able to reach out to and lean on.
Yeah, definitely feel the same. So thank you so much. And thank you all for joining today. I will be sending a follow-up email. If not today, then first thing in the morning with the recorded version of today's webinar so that you can share it with anybody who wasn't able to attend today. And I'll also include some of the other resources. So thank you all so much. And we hope you have a great rest of your afternoon.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Take
Thank
care.
you. Take care.